This is Mr. Shea for Notre Dame High School's AP United States History course, Chapter 1, American Pageant. We start with indirect discoveries of the New World. I've skipped 18 or so slides, which you can see on your own, posted on my website. I'll post the entire PowerPoint on Google Classroom. We'll start here, indirect discoveries of the New World. It starts with the Christian Crusaders, and the reason it starts with the Christian Crusaders is because as a result of the Crusaders and the Crusades, new markets are opened up and new products are introduced, especially to wealthy Europeans. Products like spices for their foods, soaps, for when they're bathing, sugar, silk, and following the Crusades, these wealthy Europeans have a desire and there's a demand for these products. The problem is, it costs a lot of money to ship these products. So the products are extremely expensive and not widely used in Europe. You see here on the map, here's the original Silk Road. This would be mainly on camelback over desert. Here is probably routes traveled by Marco Polo. This is the Strait of Hormuz. Again, difficult crossing, going through different peoples, who's going to let you by, the tolls that you're going to have to pay increases all the costs. This is present day Iran. Later on, the Portuguese, with the invention of the caravel, a better way of making a ship, begin to explore into Africa. Uh, this is important for a couple reasons. One, they sail around the tip of Africa, Da Gama does, and opens up that uh, door to India and China for easier trade and transportation, eliminating all these middlemen and these that they would use during these routes. It also opens up the door for slavery as the demand for sugar increases in plantations. That's Marco Polo depiction of Marco Polo crossing the Strait of Hormuz. But like I was saying, the plantation system arises as a result of the demand for sugar, especially. And with a plantation system, there's a demand for workers. And with a demand for workers, there's the demand for slaves. So Africa becomes extremely important to the Portuguese, and the slave trade really begins to grow from there. You can see here, this is the picture from the tunnel, the slave fortress Gorée. It's the point of no return. When you enter this door, the door of no return. And there's the slave fortress itself. It's here that Africans would be shipped and then eventually sold and transported to the New World. So Spain wants to get involved, but in order to get involved, they first had to unite, and they did with the marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella. Also, the expulsion of the Muslim Moors, which was anything but pleasant. Once Spain is united, it could turn its focus into competing with the Portuguese. However, because the Portuguese already control Africa, Spain can't head south and around the coast of Africa like Portugal did. It has to turn to the west. Enter Christopher Columbus. Presents his idea, Italian explorer, of heading west across the Atlantic Ocean in hopes of finding a route to China and India, and that would benefit Spain greatly. They had no idea what they were going to find. It was going to be far more substantial than that. Columbus lands in the Bahamas in 1492. Remember, that trip wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for men to set out west to open ocean. If we look at that map that we looked previously, if we went back to it, I'm not going to here, but if we went back to it, you could see that all the past boating routes stayed mainly towards the land. They never went too far away from the coastline. So Columbus's trip was very brave. His men nearly mutinied due to fear and starvation, but they did make it. And believing they had found India, the West Indies, Columbus named the native peoples Indians. So what does Columbus's discovery lead to? So much. We pull it all together in what we consider the Columbian Exchange between the New World, the Old World, and Africa. And you see the goods that were exchanged between them. Gold and silver obviously went from the New World back to the Old World, especially the conquistadors we're talking about in a second. The crop corn, which was the mainstay crop of most native peoples in the Americas. Later on, tobacco, which saves the Virginia colony. John Rolfe's discovery of how to plant and cultivate it efficiently really saves the Jamestown colony, so we'll get to that at a later time. And syphilis, which is a disease that Really, the New World snuck in there on the Old World. You could read more about that on your own. What did the Old World bring? Well, horses for one. Horses are big because it changed a lot of the Native American tribal cultures. They became more hunter-gatherer type, really hunter type cultures within native populations because they had the ability to cover vast areas of land now with the introduction of horses. And then the biggest and worst thing that the old world brought to the new world was disease: smallpox, measles, bubonic plague. The diseases that the Europeans had built immunities up over thousands of years, but Native Americans had been isolated and did not build up those same immunities. So once the Europeans exposed them to these diseases, they died in massive numbers. You'll notice that nothing's really coming to Africa, only going out, and that's slave labor. When you really take a very simplistic view, really the sugar revolution, which led to the plantation system, the desire for sugar in a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or sugar in a pastry, led to millions of Africans being enslaved. Spain and Portugal finally came up with an idea that they would just split the world in two. Very modest of them in 1494 in the Treaty of Tordesillas, and they drew a line right down the middle of the globe, the line of demarcation. Anything to the west of that line would be Spain's, and east would be Portugal's. Spain desired to exploit this line by sending over conquistadors or conquerors. These are individuals who wanted to prove themselves to their country. They wanted to find gold. They wanted the glory of conquering a native people. They wanted to spread Christianity. That was their goal. Famous conquistadors: Balboa. He discovered the Pacific Ocean, or first to lay eyes on the Pacific Ocean, stuck a flag in the ocean, and claimed it all for Spain. He did this over the Isthmus of Panama, a narrow strip of land that connected North and South America, that connects North and South America. Today, the present-day Panama Canal is there. Magellan aimed to sail around the world. He almost made it. He made it around the tip of South America, but on a leg of his journey, he was actually killed, but his crew did end up finishing the trip in 1521. Ponce de Leon, exploring Florida for gold, also looking for the Fountain of Youth. Coronado went in our present-day southwestern United States, all the way up to Kansas, looking for the seven golden cities, as did Hernan de Soto, who went up through Florida and discovered the Mississippi River, looking for the same seven golden cities. Francisco Pizarro, famous for conquering the Incas and bringing with it several riches. And what was the overall effect on the European economy? Well, it's really the birth of the economic system of capitalism, the idea of advancing oneself or a corporation and looking for more. And why? Because there's so much more wealth in the country that it leads to inflation, and with inflation you need banking to regulate inflation, and with banking comes loans, and you have this modern day capitalistic society formed as a result of the conquistadors. The Spanish government also gave the conquistadors the right to commend Indians or control them, really enslave them, and that was the encomienda system. They could do these things as long as they were trying to Christianize them. Unfortunately for the Native Americans, this system was extremely cruel, and most would die as a result of disease. It also led to the Spanish realizing that they would have to focus really on African slaves more than Native American slaves due to disease and efficiency. You'd see some of the explorers: Columbus, Amerigo Vespucci, 1499, at America, right, map maker. He had the continent really cut right here with his original map. He didn't know how far west it went. Ponce de Leon, Cortez in Mexico, we're talking about in a second. Pizarro down here, the Incas. Magellan's exploration, De Soto across the Mississippi, Coronado up into Kansas. Later you see French and English get involved with Cartier and Cabot and Verrazano. Okay, conquest of Mexico. Probably the most famous conquest by Hernan Cortez. Conquered the Aztecs led by Montezuma. What led to his success? Well, for one, picking up translators, understanding the people, understanding their concerns with the rulers, and Montezuma specifically. Eventually, Cortez lays siege to the capital city, Tenochtitlan. I think I said that right. You could look it up for pronunciation. It's close. It's close. But Cortez laid siege to the Aztec capital, and it was disease and superior military that ultimately led to his success. What's the result of, or the end effect of his conquest? More than just all the gold and riches that came along with the city, the Aztecs were a very sophisticated society with plenty of gold and silver to make Cortez rich and famous, and all the things that came along with that. But it was also the birth of a brand new culture, a culture of mestizos, which is a blending of Indian and European heritage that carried on in Mexico up until present day. There's just a depiction, Spanish depiction of Cortez heading towards the Aztec capital. This would be the Native American depiction of the same event. There's the capital city, which I'm not going to embarrass myself trying to pronounce once again, but you can see it's very advanced with bridges leading to this centralized island where the Aztec leader Montezuma ruled from. And we talked about some of the other explorers who get involved. Okay, in present-day southwestern United States, the Spanish also had an influence. We saw Coronado, who explored, but also the Spanish looked to expand really a Catholic mission into this area, focused more on religion in this area, probably because there wasn't as much gold there. And so they attacked first the Pueblo peoples in the Battle of Acoma. It's a very brutal attack, but after the battle, the Spanish were very successful in converting the Pueblo people, probably by force in a way, but eventually the Pueblo people took to their new religion. But as time went on, many of the Pueblo population began to die off again. Disease, the common theme, disease, but they didn't understand that the disease was the result of lack of immunities. They blamed it most likely on their new religion. So in 1680, these natives rose up in Pope's rebellion, killed their missionaries and their families, and drove them out. It would be decades before the Spanish were able to head back into that area. You see also the Spanish influence in Texas, and then up through San Diego. Your book presents a very different light on the Spanish, or I should say compares the Spanish to the English settlements, and really portrays the Spanish in a much more positive light when it comes to conquering or exploiting or whatever, settling these new lands. That's up to you to decide. I don't think the Native Americans would necessarily think they benefited from the Spanish, but maybe because of the blending of culture and the amount of people who survived and coexisted, I guess it would be slightly better than the English, who did not have that happen. Just see here some of the Spanish missions, as how far north it went into California. Okay, that concludes this PowerPoint. Again, you could see the entire PowerPoint on my website or on our Google Classroom. See you guys later.